Welcome to the Value Maker podcast. My name is Ryan Purvis. I'm your host, supported by Heather Bicknell, as we meet with the people that make the digital workspace work. It's about the technology, it's about improving people's work experience and finding the return on value. Welcome, Nicolle, to the Value Makers podcast. Do you want to introduce yourself, please?
Nice to meet you. I'm Nicolle Herrera. I'm from Colombia and I own a creative studio that works with the clients internationally in their communication and in their storytelling. So different means, so animation, if it needs to have some sort of marketing within the strategy, branding, character design. We're now diving into the VR, AR experiences, but all of it has to go with storytelling and communication for brands.
Fantastic. And I have to say, you've got the coolest websites I've ever seen.
Thank you. I appreciate the comment.
It's unusual that I will look at something and go, wow, that's really cool. And I've sat and played, I've looked at your website a few times. And usually when someone does something like you've done, it can come across really cheesy or really badly done. But for some reason, the way you've done it actually works. So we'll definitely put a link to your website in the show notes for sure. But I'm curious about some of these icons. It's a person inside the solar system circles. Is that the right interpretation?
Exactly. The brand was basically, it had a different tone before, but it was pretty, but it has always been vibrant, colorful, but also it has the part of going, like lighting the spark of the universe was the first motive that the brand had. And now it has elements that had to do with the universe. So working along with different other countries, different brands, taking in new challenges. So that's why there's planets and there's like different things going on that are quite surreal.
Oh, I love it. And you got little rockets that as you scroll down, the rocket's taking off. It's so cool. As I say, it was like, wow, this is the most awesome website I've ever seen in my life. Tell me a bit about your business and your approach with customers. How do you help them? You talk about storytelling. How do you determine what their story is?
There has been different types of projects. So we're open to also receiving different proposals or different things that people have to say. There's somebody that needs something specific. This flyer and these banners and things for a show, for an event. So that will be it. And what we do is to redirect how it is going to communicate and perhaps also suggest certain other things that could work within so that it is even more powerful. Communication becomes more powerful. But if, for example, somebody arrives and says, no, I do have this idea, but I don't know how to perform it and things like that, then it's finding the right route and the right solutions, investigation. So there's a lot of, let's say, pre-production and post-production within the process of pre-production, all the brainstorming and such, along with the client or with the brand, and then coming up with something that sounds for them, for the type of brand, because it's not the same to have one solution for agriculture, let's say, than for education or than for fashion. So that's why we need to investigate a lot and so on. And that's where now we have a bigger external team to be able to approach it from different other perspectives, such as development and some other areas that come along with creativity.
So you do a discovery process, and I'm looking at some of your examples here. It looks like you design for all sorts of platforms, let's say mobile apps, let's say websites. It looks like a few other things here. How do you mentioned a big team. Are you spread across the globe? Is it a bunch of contractors or how's that worked out?
Exactly. Contractors, people from different countries. It's just finding the right time, the right moment to meet up, standing over. That's why there's all this digital space. So the communication through Notion, the communication through these other platforms, Slack, for example, things like that. As to say, we have this new project. Now we have to work on this specific thing, and there's no limit in where the person is located.
And how do you find people?
Sometimes most of the times through networking. So it's that I start talking to somebody, that person shares some things, and then I'm like, wait a moment. That's a skill set that is really powerful and that I do not have any contact on. So that's how we start, like also partnerships and so on. So through networking, that's the best way.
Yeah, and as I'm thinking through your different use cases here, some of these things are really interesting. What this is your business? Did you found this, or is this something that you've joined and grown?
No, I found this. It was quite journey because at first I didn't view it as a like this, but more like a solo journey. And I was just in college, like
Yeah.
just, and I said, let's create this brand and let's do this and that. And then it started evolving more and more, and it will evolve according to the roadmap even more.
So, what role do you play then now as the founder of the business? Are you still hands on doing the actual work with the customers, or are you managing the people? What are you doing, and what do you like doing?
At first, I tried to have somebody else work within the approaching clients while I work on the behind the different processes of the creation, ideation, sketching, and all of this, the briefs themselves. But then I realized that a communication in that sort of way is a little bit more difficult, even though we have like the documents and such to input information so that it comes easier. It's best for me to be there. So I handle that part and handle all the creative processes because the rest of the team have the other mindset, which is more towards most of them towards development. Unless there's somebody else that we need, like for example, marketing is another one. And if the project requires somebody else with their other expertise, then the person comes
And,
in.
and just to make sure I understand, when you talk about development, are you actually talking about coding up a website or a mobile app that you now do that as well, or just a
We're in the
software?
process of diving into that space as well, because at first it was just the communication alone, but now we're diving into experiences, which requires not only the part of the apps and the websites, which are experiences themselves, but also immersing technology within. Of course, there's technology within all the software that we use, but technology as in immersiveness, such as AR, VR,
Yeah,
MR.
because you did mention that, and I was curious to know what you were doing in the AR VR world. I mean, can you give us some examples?
So, for example, when it comes to AR, VR, we're already prepared with the specific knowledge for applying it for let's say, AR could be for education. So there's different examples, or for medicine. So for teaching purposes or during surgery, those are other examples that we've encountered as well of the potential that it has towards many different sectors. So let's say that doctors in the midst of doing a surgery, then that person can use mixed reality. Let's say, just to put an example, the Apple Vision Pro. Just to put that as an example, because that's mixed reality and can perform surgery while that person is looking elsewhere for the different results. Another type is education. Another type is also meditation, for example. There's many different examples and many different appliances that we're trying to dive into to see what can be done, and also applying things that have to do with video games, but not necessarily creating a video game, but applying those elements of interactivity, not only you
Yeah.
seeing, but also interacting with objects. So that's, of course, a little bit of a long process, but there's experience within that aspect.
Oh, for sure. Having played with the Apple product recently, probably about 3 months now, I could definitely see what you're talking about. Being like, I think Citrus might be a bit tricky because you've got that big battery pack to carry around with you. The health and safety and education space, it's almost a no-brainer. It's almost I haven't got that already, and I think it's probably cost of the units and size of the units. That's the problem. But how do you approach it differently to say a normal app? Is there a difference?
Depends on the scalability, because, for example, an application, of course, it takes a long process.
Mm.
But when it comes to AR, VR, and if you include interactivity, that's when it becomes longer, a longer process, something to be made, to be tested, retested, and all of this. And to see if
Yeah.
it works for that specific nature, or if it doesn't. For example, if it's an application, um, VR is a little bit complex to make.
Mm.
AR works more for your like mobile devices than AR is, and AR is more accessible than VR because VR requires the VR glasses. AR requires just your smartphone, and that's about it. So
Yeah.
AR and an application can be joined And then if you need geolocation or anything else, that's another process. So I would say that the main difference is that in your smartphone, it's a little bit difficult to have VR experiences. It would be more like 360. So it's not exactly VR. And with VR, there's some other elements related to accessibility. So maybe in different spaces in which they have the equipment that can happen, but not in every single space. One of it is for education, for example, for other types of purposes. The other one is for enjoying, like the moment, entertainment. What I'm trying to say is that VR is a little bit more not that accessible for, and rather than augmented reality.
I think VR is probably still a very immature space. And I think what you're saying with AR and even the mixed reality is probably where we're all going to be for the next while, because that's probably the easiest to adopt. And I was just thinking, we just did a trip now to Paris and we were walking around the Eiffel Tower, the top. And that's the kind of thing that an AR application would be really useful, because at the top of you're at the top of the Eiffel Tower and you've got like a 360-degree disc that you can walk around. And as you walk around, it gives you all the famous landmarks that are at a distance from where you are right now. So the tallest building in America, the tallest building in South Africa, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But what would be really cool if they actually had the app that you could basically put your phone up and scan around and see the app, see the same thing, but through the app, because that's just that little bit extra. And I think that's probably the most useful for the normal person, I would say, as opposed to a specialist in a health or a safety world, to see the value of AR or mixed reality. And you see it with the mapping tools, like to take a route somewhere. If you use Waze, for example, it'll start saying this location has a crash or whatever it is. What are you designing, or are you thinking about still what the current devices are, or are you thinking about what the future devices could be? So, for example, smart glasses, smart watches, maybe. I don't know what you're thinking about when you guys are thinking about these solutions.
So the main area or the main like words that we think of is immersiveness.
Yeah.
So specifically not thinking we're only going to do AR, VR, but if something else pops up, is some other technology, some other glasses. There's a different bunch of glasses within the market right now. And there's some others that are appearing, but that still have to do with AR, VR, MR, XR, etc. It's the same idea. So we think of immersiveness. There's sound, or if if somebody has a vision impairment, then sound and vibrations could be the way to go if that's the solution. Or if somebody doesn't hear, then captions, things like that. So trying also to think of the different things that could make someone be immersed within a space, be it visually or with audio or visual and then text.
Yeah. You've mentioned accessibility a few times, and I wonder, obviously we're very fortunate to not have a lack of sight or hearing or something like that. But I hadn't really thought about using AR or VR for that sort of situation. Is there a demand that you're seeing with that? Or are people doing stuff to solve problems?
We have it there, but it would be great also to, within the projects that we've received, to suggest it like bit by bit, because it requires, of course, of other types of elements to make it accessible, and a little bit more of investigation and such to get it to the ground, so it is more like in the back of our heads. But we have thought of that because there's many things that aren't really accessible at the moment, and that should be. And so that's something that we have in there, but we haven't put into practice yet. But it's important to apply.
And what's driving this for you, and what makes this interesting?
Because I've been learning bit by bit a little bit of sign language. It's something that has been interesting me way too much. There's nobody in my family that has this impairment or this, but I've realized that is something that is lacking or that doesn't really work in a way. Like I walk down the street, for example, so there's streets and the streets aren't really aligned. So how do you expect somebody that doesn't walk well or that is with a wheelchair or something else to pass by? Just that one thought, I'm like, but why? Or when you're going to enter a place and there's no ramp, or when you have a menu but If somebody doesn't see, then how are they going to? Or if you're also walking down the street, I've seen some signs, the dots to stop when when you're
Yes.
walking by, the dots to stop, and then the other ones to keep on going and such. But that is not enough. As to know where you're going, like it's things like that. But I don't know. There's many things, small things, but apparently small things that I think of.
It's a very good point. As I said, we were in Paris recently, and I don't know if you've ever been, but when you walk to a street where there's a crossing area for the pedestrians, obviously the pavement will have ridges, so the person who can't see or has limited vision will know that they're at a stop. And for years, I've always thought that there's an attachment on the side of the traffic light, or we say it's called a robot, that you would basically put your hand on the top and that would be like a sensor to turn the pedestrian light on. But my son, who's 6, figured out that actually the button's underneath at the bottom. And for years, I've always just touched the top because everywhere else it's always the top, but actually the button's at the bottom. So it's one of those things that from a usability point of view makes a whole lot of sense, because if you're going to reach out with your hand, you're going to have your palm up. So to reach out and find it and press up is actually the most natural thing to do, not to go and try to find your top and press down. But it was like this thing where the epiphany of years of doing this and pressing the wrong place. And the more you've talked, the more I've thought about, I've got these very nice sunglasses, they're Ray-Bans with a microphone and a camera, and I can do phone calls and stuff. But actually, that's a little bit step further would be to have those glasses. And if you are sight impaired, yes, you don't care about the sunglasses per se because you can't see or you have limited vision. But if those were a bit smarter and you were following a route, and because the world we live in now has satellites everywhere and Bluetooth and all the rest of it, you could, in theory, have something telling you that you're in a dangerous, beware, you're going to cross the road. It could be tied into the traffic lights. All that kind of stuff could actually be happening. Not so much the mixed reality that you talked about, but that immersion you talked about. I think it could actually happen quite nicely. So it's a cool idea to actually think about and solve that problem. I don't know what you think. I'm just talking as I think.
Yeah, I don't know much. I've seen the Ray-Ban glasses with Meta, but I specifically don't know how they work, like what characteristics do they have. But that is something to take into consideration.
They're pretty basic. They're very cool. I love them. In fact, they're so good, my wife got a pair now. But it's a camera, so you can take video, you can take a picture, and then you've got audio and you've got voice. So you can record stuff. You can say, hey, Meta, that'll do something. It's very basic, smart technology. When I actually bought them, I thought they had the ability to put text on the screen. I don't know why I thought that, but I thought that was like the cool thing. And I think this goes back, there was an old TV show that I used to watch as a kid called Beyond 2000, which was this futuristic documentary. And and it was the thing that I'd seen on there once upon a time where you'd have smart lenses and on your glasses, you'd see the text in front of you. So I thought it was something like that. But in the end, they're just really headphones with a camera attached to a pair of sunglasses. But if they're a little bit smarter, and probably the next versions could be, and if you think about, we had Google Glasses a while ago that disappeared. The next version of those could be this thing that for a person that has some challenges, it could help them. It could vibrate to say that you're getting closer and closer to a road in case there isn't those things. And you're right, a lot of roads and a lot of pavements don't have any consideration for people that are not fully able-bodied, although there's many Paralympic people that would make us all look a bit silly with their capabilities. So using some of this smart technology and having this pattern recognition software, that maybe that camera is looking ahead and identifying potholes and irregular surfaces, etc., and actually just using vibrations to navigate the walker to go a little bit to the left and a little bit to the right. That's pretty cool as a futuristic thought.
Exactly, giving out instructions so that you arrive safely. And also know where you're going. You just arrived, there's this down the road, or a car is approaching, things like that.
Yeah,
so that they
100%.
also can become completely independent instead of just relying on somebody else. I've seen people who go outside alone, but they still have some difficulties and maybe walk slower so that they can see where they're going and all of this element. So it would be pretty helpful. But also the thing I think there's with that is that many of their solutions that have been provided for different things that require accessibility are pretty expensive. It's not really accessible in the sense of one's budget. When you have a smartphone, the smartphone has the accessibility option. But if you're going to do something else that doesn't require the use of the smartphone, then it becomes way more expensive.
Yeah,
And you think
and
with
I think
VR glasses, it happens, like the same thing happens. The ones that are more accessible are the Quest, like the Meta one.
Hmm.
The rest of them are quite expensive,
no,
like
they are.
thousand
Uh,
more.
yeah, the Apple one is what $3,500, I think. And having used it for 5 minutes, which is not an expert opinion by any means, I would find it very hard to justify $3,500 for it. It's
It
just
sounds more like a commodity, which
when it's not a commodity yet. No, it's a special. I would say it's a specialized tool. But if you go look at the level of the Quest or the other one, uh, probably the names now, but they're about $200 to $300. That's probably a more suitable price. But then if you look at the amount of corporates that aren't using them, and you think that, I mean, $200, you still need a computer to go with it. It's not necessarily a self-contained unit. So I think that there's got to be, and that's where probably the Apple version, I think, is self-contained to some extent. I could be corrected on that, but that's the problem. And until they become a self-contained unit, they're not going to be adopted, which brings us back to the phone. The phone is still, the most useful tool.
for now, augmented reality is the closest in terms of people can afford it if they have like the smartphone and within the range of like budget. They work
Yeah.
fine, even if it's not, let's say, Apple, Samsung, or any other. They work fine with augmented reality. Virtual reality is the one that needs a little bit more of a push so that it can be implemented in many other different ways and within a lower budget, let's say, so that it can be applied in more instances rather than just in a few of them.
Yeah, I think it is. It was almost a fad that may come now that AI is becoming more prodigious and you can do more stuff, may come back. And I think it does come down to being a self-contained unit on the edge. It's got to work on your phone, on your headset, etc., to generate that AR or that immersive experience. Because in the end, the phone is still the phone. It still does calls, it still text message, etc. So why is it still so big? Let's just still to have power to do this other compute that you're going to have to do. So it would be interesting. So we've talked a lot about AR, VR. Do you want to talk a little bit about your creative consulting? Do you sit with customers to brainstorm some of these ideas and stretch them out?
Exactly. So as you mentioned way before is the discovery process, getting to know, first of all, the brand itself, if there is a brand like already established or is about to be established. And within a call, instead of just emailing, because that's something that actually doesn't work. You have to talk one-on-one, then start molding and then asking questions. So it is more like an exchange. I wouldn't say a discussion, but more like a brainstorming to get the whole idea. Again, like what is your target audience? Do you already have an established brand? Do you have a link so that we can see? Social media, anything else? Depends on the project as well. We ask even further questions to see what is going on and then what the person is looking for. And from there on, let's say we had 1 hour of different exchanges of information. And then we start making the profile. A profile, putting all that information in a more accurate way. Because of course it's just taking notes and then you're like, this is a little bit disorganized. And the rest of it is a proposal.
Okay.
So a proposal, the average costs of each different things according to what was discussed, if there was a specific deadline nobody said, or if not, it's exactly so that it can be sent. And then that's when the other discussion comes into as saying, but I need this other thing. Then should we negotiate? Should we like more accurate, more to the ground? Then if everything goes well, within that part is moving forward into the creation, into putting the team all together if it's something that requires more
Yeah.
people in. That's more or less the process of the creation and all of that, which varies from project to project.
And what's a good project length for you? Is it a week? Is it a month? So what do projects normally last for you?
Sometimes they're quite short because it's something that's more specific, like a piece for social media or a flyer or something that requires less time. So let's say 1 or 2 weeks with
Okay.
revisions, with going back and forth until there's the final result. There's other ones that last longer, let's say, yeah, from a month on, depending, and packages as well. Those are the other types of projects that we handle that are the creation of social media content, for example,
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
one thing that comes into a package, so per month. And the other ones that are longer projects from 1 month up to, let's say, 6 months or more. That also depends on what is discussed and until what point we intervene.
Yeah. I can understand that. Oh, fantastic. I'm pretty good with questions. Anything else you want to share?
I'm not sure. I don't know if there's any other questions so that I can keep on talking because
No, this has been great. I found it really interesting. I quite enjoyed our discussion around AR and VR and some of the stuff you're thinking about there with accessibility. What's the best place for people to get hold of you if they wanted to find out more?
one way is through the website, another way is directly sometimes through LinkedIn so
Yeah.
that I can reply faster, and email. The
Okay.
email,
Sure.
I don't know if I should
You
put
can
it.
share it. Yeah.
It's hello@nikkirev.com is the same part of as the website. So NIAKIREUV.com.
Fantastic. Where did the name come from?
At first, I was looking for different names. This was more of the combination of my nickname, which is Nikki
Yeah.
from Nicolle, and the rest of it was like how people called me. So like nikkirev. So that's how it came along. It was because it started off as something more personal.
Yeah. Okay.
So I
Fantastic.
stayed with that name.
Oh, great. No, look, it's a very unique name. And I said, you've got a great website and you've also got a great wallpaper behind you. So you've really got the artistic creative gene for sure. It's been great having you on the show and we'll look forward to see how you progress with your various projects.
Thank you. Thank you for this conversation. It's been a pleasure talking with you and having all this brainstorming session also. It's in the same call.
Thank you for listening to our episode. I hope you enjoyed it. Please share it with your friends and colleagues. Help us grow our network. Please also check out our website at www.valuu.work and our product that's on there. It's something we worked really hard on. We hope to benefit you.